My name's Nick. I was in a bad motorcycle accident on the 1st of January 2018. I've got bad orthopaedic injuries and I've got diffuse axonal bone injury.
Nick is my youngest of three boys. He's a very adventurous, lively child. My husband and I were both at home. We didn't know that Nick was out on his motorbike and we got a phone call to say he'd had an accident. Whilst Nick was in the Royal London in intensive care, it was very early on. We met with the head nurse and she informed us that fortunately Nick was in a situation where there could be a litigation claim.
I met Nick in the hospital, and then when he was transferred to his NHS Rehabilitation unit at the Homerton, at that stage Nick was in a very, very poor state. He was sort of minimally conscious.
He was in a coma for 4 months. Then a bombshell was dropped. The consultant said Nick has got a very severe brain injury. We used to talk to him constantly. I used to say to him every day, Nick, I know you're just sleeping and you will be fine. And I just was convincing myself and trying to sort of get him to interact in some way.
When I first woke up, I was still, they call it minimally conscious. So I was still very slow, everything was laboured. But the more time it took, the more I started to come round. And my mum and dad were horrified because every question they kept asking, the answer was, we just don't know, we just don't know.
At that stage he had a speech valve, he wasn't talking, he hadn't emerged. But gradually, when I went to see him, as he'd sort of progressed, it was clear that he had a really good sense of humour. And, you know, Nick had a fascinating job. He worked in Smithfield in the meat market. He'd been doing that for years, and he clearly was a real cheeky chappy, and that showed. And I think that made me realise he got the determination to do well in his rehab, and how important it was for him and the whole family to try and get back the person that Nick had been pre-accident.
My rehab journey started in Homerton. I was doing, I think, physio 5 times a week. There's a speech therapist there as well, because when I first woke up, I couldn't speak at all. I used to communicate with my family via iPad or text message or something like that. Towards the end of my time in Homerton, we had the team meeting. There was loads of people there. One of the therapists in Homerton told me quite bluntly, you might never walk again, you'll never drive again, you may never eat again. Hearing that news in that meeting, I just couldn't accept that. I may be more determined to prove them wrong.
It was a very, very awful situation to go through. Stephanie was so expert at pulling the right people together for Nick. If I had to make biggest thank you in my life, apart from the medics who kept him alive, it would be to Stephanie. You know, I often said, you know, this is my son Stephanie, I know Jan, you know, and she would absolutely pull out all stops to try and make things happen for us, and she did. And she coordinated the whole case. I can't thank her enough.
You know, the obvious things were obviously the therapy and sort of some of the physical adaptations, and ensuring that we persuade the other side that we needed interim payments to fund transport and so on.
For me, it was about my son having the rehab and being happy as possible and trying to get back to as near as normal, you know, after being told so many times that that wasn't going to happen.
We all love working with Nick, but it's so great to see what the settlement has done. You know, they've moved into this fabulous bungalow that was, you know, Nick project managed the adaptations. And it's given him, again, a new lease of life, because he doesn't have to challenge himself with steps and curbs and getting through small doors. He's got financial security for the future, which is always something that people really worry about. And he's moving on. You know, he's going to the gym, he's doing all the things that he wanted to do. I mean, life's never going to be the same, but he's somebody who's really making the most of it.
It was great because Stephanie come to visit me in hospital. She come to Mum, all the meetings were, and eventually it was like she was part of the family. My life now is different because I don't go work for 5 nights a week. I go fishing, I go to the gym every day. Looking to the future for me, my life is really positive now. Like, I've got a family, I've got a little daughter, I've got one more on the way, and couldn't have done all this without the help of Stuart's.
It's just so lovely to see how life moves on. Never the same, but you know, a really valuable, positive, lovely life. So for me, it's brilliant. Brilliant to see what we've all achieved together.
Looking to the future, it's so very comforting that we can sit back and see that now Nick has absolutely everything for him to be able to get on with his life. That is down to the hard work and the expert advice that we've had from Stuart's.